Pride of Higara. This is Captain Soban of the fleet, Farron Shah. Looks like you could use a hand. Attention all Sobani, pick your targets and engage.
Hello everyone, hello, this is Captain Soban. Welcome back to Homeworld Tutorials, where I'm going to be teaching you guys today how to do stuff like this, like switching out your weapons and whatnot for other weapons. So you can see this heavy cruiser is launching missiles and has plasma bomb launchers instead of ion cannons and kinetic turrets. So without further ado, let's get into this. Okay, so in order to do these mods, basically the only thing you're going to need is a text editing software, which if you use Windows, you already have one built in called Notepad, so you guys are all ready to go. If you're using Apple or Linux, if you have some sort of text editing software and that, it should work perfectly fine. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's go ahead and go into our folder that we extracted all of the stuff from the big file in the last tutorial, which for me is I made a folder called Homeworld Extracted Bid File that has everything in here that we'll need. The next thing we want to do is we want to go into R1 because R1 has all of the ship files for the Kushan side, R2 has all the ship files for the Taidan side, and these ones are the P1, P2, and P3 are different like subclasses in the game. P1 is Tragic Raiders, P2 is Kadesh, and P3 is some miscellaneous factions that they couldn't actually implement into the game. So we're going to go into R1 and then ignore all these folders because these have the 3D models that we don't have to worry about. We're just messing around with the ship file. Keep scrolling down until we run into the heavy cruiser, which is right here. So before we actually start editing this, we want to make sure that we copy this to a folder so we can mess around with it and not mess around with any of the default stuff, because if we mess something up, we can always take this file and throw it back into the game to set everything back to default. So for me, I have already done that. I made a folder on my desktop called Mod Changes where I keep all the these ships. And then for me, I made like elite versions because I made a folder called elite versions that has the special modifications of the ships that I've been messing around with. But just go ahead and make a new folder on your desktop. So go ahead, make a new folder, and then you want to make a new folder within that one called R1, just so it's easier for you to figure out where everything is. You want to take this file, and then you want to hold down Control-C to make a copy of it. Click this folder and hit Control-V, and then you'll have a copy of that file. Now we can mess around with this file and do whatever we want with it. So go ahead and double click it to open up the file, and as you can see, we'll see everything inside the actual file that is controlled by the heavy cruiser. And we want to keep scrolling down until we see number of guns, and then we have all of the status for the guns. Now on the heavy cruiser, there are 10 guns. We have 4 ion cannons and 6 kinetic turrets. So as we can see, we have gun 0. This is a large ion cannon, so this controls one of the ion cannons. And then we have another one, another one, another one, and then now we have the very large energy cannons, which are the kinetic cannons. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so before we do anything, I'm going to kind of teach you guys a little bit about all of this mumbo jumbo here so that you guys know kind of what this all means. Now, I don't exactly know what every single one of these things mean because I haven't really tested around with them, but I'll go through with the stuff that I recognize and that I have actually messed around with. So first things first, type gun new gimbal. This means that this gun is rotatable, which makes sense because these are on turrets that rotate around and shoot. They don't just shoot forward. Sound type, this is the sound that the gun makes. This is an ion cannon turret, so it makes an ion cannon sound. Bullet type, bullet beam. Again, it's an ion cannon, so it uses the type beam. Damage low and damage high. These are the range of damage that this weapon's going to do. The way the game works is whenever a weapon attacks, it rolls a dice between these two numbers, and whatever number the dice rolls on, because it's completely random, is how much damage it actually does. Now, beams are a lot different than kinetic weapons or plasma weapons because of how their damage is calculated. Since it's a continuous damage weapon, it does damage based it does damage every single frame, it does damage every game frame, and in the game there's 60 frames in 1 second. So to figure out exactly how much damage this ion does, we need to grab a calculator. Oop. And then we need to take 30, which is the minimum amount of damage, and multiply it by 60, and we'll know how much damage this weapon does per second. And that's 1,800 damage per second that this beam does. Now the maximum it can do is 33. So if we take 33, multiply that by 60, you will see it does 1,980 damage per second at maximum. That sounds like a lot of damage, but to keep in mind, ion beams aren't shooting all of the time. They shoot for a little bit, stop, and shoot for a little bit. Those calculations are here at fire time, and here at bullet lifetime. Bullet lifetime is how long the beam is going to shoot when it first attacks, and fire time is how frequently it's going to be attacking. So how this works is the fire time and bullet lifetime, their timers start at the same exact time. So this means that the bullet or the ion is going to shoot for 2.2 seconds, and then it's going to rest for the remainder of the time, and then start shooting again at 6 seconds. So if we grab our calculator, we could figure out how much it's going to rest between firing. And by doing that, you just take the fire time and minus the bullet lifetime. So that would be 3.8 seconds. So this means that the ion cannon is going to shoot for 2.2 seconds and then rest for 3.8, shoot again for 2.2, rest for 3.8. So that's how that calculation works. So even though we calculated they do 1,600 damage, they do 1,600 damage within 6 seconds. Which means if we grab our calculator one more time, we can find out that 1,600 divided by 6 means that ion does 266 DPS. This is why heavy cruisers are very deadly. Next thing I'll tell you guys about is the bullet length and bullet range. Now for ion beams, you want to have these be the same number no matter what you set it to. You always want to keep these numbers in sync because bullet length is the visual representation of how long the ion beam is. Bullet range is the physics representation, which means that that ship has to be within this range to actually physically take the damage. So if you set these out of sync, then you might notice that the beam looks like it's hitting the target, but it's not actually damaging it, or the ship might be taking damage even though the beam is not showing that it's taking damage. So you always want to make sure that these numbers are synced if you mess with them. Bullet speed, you don't have to worry about bullet speed when it comes to ion beams. It is an instant weapon, so we'll worry about this when we start looking at kinetic weapons. Bullet mass is how much physics is behind the beam. You can make some really weird things if you mess around with this, and you can really break the game if you set it to a really weird value. So because of the fact ion beams hit the target every game frame, this could completely destabilize some ships. So be careful when messing with bullet mass with ion beams. Trigger happy, I don't exactly know what this does. I'm assuming this makes it to where the higher this value is, the more likely the ship is going to engage the enemy with this weapon. If it isn't already engaged, like if it's just passively engaging without any commands. I'm thinking that's what that means. Maximum turn angle and minimum turn angle, this is how much that the turret will rotate. So this is more of a visual thing. And maximum acceleration and deceleration, this is about the turret that's built into the ship. So this is the maximum amount of degrees per second it'll rotate, and this is the minimum amount. to find its target. Not too sure what the angle speed and deceleration speed is. I'm assuming this is how many degrees of freedom that the turret has. I wouldn't really mess around with this unless you know what this value means, because I haven't quite figured it out either. But I'm thinking that's what it means. So this is set to 360. There's 360 degrees in the circle. This gives the turret complete freedom to rotate around completely. The angle tracking and deceleration tracking. This, I believe, gives the ion beam a little bit of freedom, so the turret doesn't have to look completely. I believe these values give a little bit of freedom to the turret, so it doesn't have to be 100. It doesn't have to be completely facing the target. It gives just that 1 degree of freedom, so they can be played around with a little bit to still hit the target. Barrel length, I believe this is how thick the ion cannon is. Not entirely sure, haven't really messed with it, but that's what my judgment tells me. So this is 82 meters, which if it works the way I'm thinking, that means that the beam is 82 meters thick, which is a big ion beam. And offset, I believe this is like position of the turret on the ship. Again, I haven't messed with this. I'm just thinking that's what it is based off of other things I've messed with. And that is all of the things that you can mess with when it comes to the ion turret. So now that we talked about that, let's talk about the kinetic turrets before we start messing around with those, so I can get you guys educated on how all the different weapon systems work in Homeworld. So we will look at Gun 4, which is the first energy cannon or kinetic cannon on the heavy cruiser. So, first thing is type, new gimbal. Again, it's a rotatable turret, so it's going to be a new gimbal. Sound type, very large energy cannon. We'll have the sound of a kinetic cannon going off. Damage low, damage high. Every time this turret shoots, it'll run a dice roll between 100 and 125. Whatever it hits, that's how much damage that weapon is going to do against the target if it hits. Bullet length. This is how large. How visually large the cannon is to the player, and this is like when the bullet like shoots out of the turret and is flying towards the enemy. This is what this refers to. Bullet range. This is how far the bullet can travel before it disappears. This one is set to 5,781 meters. Bullet speed. How fast the bullet travels. And you can make ships specialize against different ships depending on the bullet speed. So if it's a really fast bullet, then it could be good against everything. If it's a really slow tracking bullet, like mine and my mod, then it can make it to where frigates can move out of the way and avoid fire, but super capitals have problems moving out of the way. So you can adjust the ship's specialization with that. Bullet mass. This is how much kinetic force is put onto the bullet that's traveling towards its target. This one's set to 1.2, which is 1.2 tons of mass. And you can really like throw things around if you mess with this, put it just a really high value, or make things break if you put it to a negative value. So this is a fun one to mess around with if you want to play around with some physics. Fire time, how frequently the turret shoots. This one is set to 3.7 seconds. So the kinetic turret shoots every 3.7 seconds. Trigger happy, again, not too sure what this is. Probably its ability to shoot enemy targets without a command. Minimum turn angle and maximum turn angle, how much the turret can rotate. Deceleration and minimum deceleration and maximum deceleration. Again, it's the same thing as the ion turrets. Maximum angle speed. Angle tracking and deceleration tracking. This, I believe, gives a small variance to the ship targeting, so it won't shoot exactly where it's supposed to. There'll be just a small, like 1 degree variance. So this could also be something to make it to where it's easier for it to hit super capitals, but harder for it to hit frigates because it has a large tracking area, so it misses more frequently. Barrel length, not sure what this refers to, and on the kinetic cannons, I'm assuming that's how big the turret is. but again, not too familiar with it. Recoil length, how many meters back the turret recoils back when it shoots its kinetic weapon, and that's about it when it comes to kinetic weapons. Most of it pretty simple, and some of it is a repeat from the ions, but most of it that you really have to remember is fire time, how far it can shoot, how fast it shoots, and how much damage it does. Those are the main things that you really have to remember about. Next, we'll take a look at the plasma bombs and see what the differences are between kinetic cannons and plasma cannons. So R1, and we'll take a look at the standard frigates, because this is the assault frigates that we know shoot plasma bombs. So we'll scroll down until we get to gun number 3, which is the plasma bomb launcher. So again, most of this is kind of the same to kinetic cannons. Actually, as you notice, there's less things that the plasma bombs have to work with than the kinetic ones. But one of the main things that you'll notice here is it says gun gimbal here. It's because the plasma bomb launchers on the assault frigates are not rotatable, so it's just fired straight out of the ship. So that's what it means by gimbal. And then of course we have the sound effect medium plasma bomb, self-explanatory, bullet type plasma bomb, damage low, damage high, same as kinetic. The low part of the low part of the amount of damage it does, the high amount for the dice roll it does, minimum angle and maximum angle, how much room and giveaway it has to target its whatever it's shooting, and this is how many degrees it has. Bullet length, how long the bullet is, bullet range, how far it can shoot, the speed, how fast it shoots, mass, how much mass is behind the weapon, and fire time, how frequently it shoots per second, or how many seconds go by before it shoots. So that's plasma bombs. Honestly, these ones are a lot easier than kinetics. Next, last one we'll look at is the missile launchers from the missile destroyer. So for missile destroyer, just scroll down till you see gun 1, and as you'll notice, there's even less here. Missile destroyers, or missile launchers, are even simpler than kinetic launchers. So type missile launcher, sound type missile launcher. One thing I will comment on is this is spelled M-I-S-S-L-E, and some reason Relic decided that must be the way that this is spelled. I have a feeling like back in Homeworld development, someone spelled missile launcher like this as they were developing the missile launcher system, and they didn't have time to correct it, so they just say, okay, if you want to use this, just spell it that way. It's fine. Which is hilarious, because this is how I spell missile in real life. I always forget the second I. So when I discovered this, it just made me crack up. I'm like, holy crap, I'm not the only one that makes that mistake. And you got your damage low, damage high. The lower dice roll, higher dice roll. Now maximum number of missiles. So this is the maximum number of missiles that will be inside the missile launcher. And missile destroyers are the only ones that can have the ability to regenerate missiles. So what that means, if you decide to do like what I did in the beginning part of the video and just take a ship and modify with tons of missiles, you want to make sure that this number is very, very big so you don't run out of missiles in combat. I would say like 15,000 or 150,000. It's just a number calculation, so it's not going to hurt the game. But for missile destroyers, they do have that ability called Missile Volley, which allows them to launch all of their missiles at once and do a massive amount of damage. So you don't really want to do that with the missile destroyer, otherwise your missile destroyer may become OP. So just keep that in mind. And then you have bullet range, which is how long the missile destroyer will, or how long the missile will go before it dissipates. So this one's set to 9,100 meters, so it'll go a long time before it dissipates. Bullet speed, this is how fast the missile moves. So this one is set to 1,250 meters per second, which is faster than any normal ship. Fire time, how frequently the missile is launched from the missile destroyer. And trigger happy, how frequently it's going to launch its missiles without giving commands. I'm assuming that's what trigger happy means. I'm not exactly sure. So I still need to mess around with this, but I'm assuming that's what it means because I think it only keeps this in effect if the ship doesn't actually have any commands. But yeah, that's the missile launcher. Very short and sweet. So, what we are going to do is we are going to take a look at our heavy cruiser, and we are going to take off some of the weapons and we're going to replace it with other things. So for this energy cannon, we're going to take the top energy cannons and we're going to replace them with missile launchers, and take the bottom energy cannons and replace them with plasma bombs. So in order to do this, we need to go back into our missile launcher, and we gotta scroll down until we see our gun. And then what you want to do is take this little icon here, and then you want to hold down your left mouse button and go down to the bottom bracket here, because everything within these brackets is the coding for that gun. So take that, you want to copy it, and then over here you want to scroll up until you see the very first gun, which is always gun 0. And do the same exact thing, top bracket all the way down to the bottom bracket, and then hit Control V. And then now you'll see we'll have the missile launcher over here. And then you want to do the same thing with the bottom one, because the first two are attached to each other. As you can see, this one's a slave driver. And then Control V as well. And now we have 2 missile launchers. And then what we want to do is we'll set this to 15,000. We'll set the bottom one to 15,000 as well. And then let's make it really, really fast. So to 0.25 on firing time, just to mess around with it. And then it could hit save. Okay. So with these settings adjusted, now the next thing we need to do is make sure that they actually apply and are working properly. So in order to do that, we have to get into the game and build the ship and tell it to attack things to just test to make sure it works properly. But first, before we even do that, we need to actually get our file that we have modified into the game. So go back over here where you have your R1 folder and your heavy cruiser. I always like to double click it and just make sure that, okay, it does have the missile launchers, because sometimes I have a bad habit of modifying a file and realizing it's in a different folder. That will save you some headaches to just get a habit of just double checking to make sure that it's actually what you adjusted. Now we need to go into the Homeworld directory. So go to your C, Sierra, Homeworld R1 if you installed it by CD. If you didn't, go to your Steam. I believe it is, for me, it would be media, because I have a, nope, it would be games, because I have a hard drive specifically for my Steam games. It would be Steam, Steam apps, common, Homeworld, Homeworld 1 Classic, data, and then here's your directory. So then you want to go to R1, and then you want to copy this by hitting Control C. Go to here. You shouldn't see any files in this folder unless you have my mod. So this should be mostly empty. Control V. If there is one already in there, go ahead and copy and replace it. There we go. And now we should have our modified heavy cruiser in the game. So now we need to launch the game. So either launch Homeworld EXE if you're doing it normally. If you have my mod, launch Homeworld SPL.exe. Alright, now that we are in the game, you want to go to multiplayer, skirmish, and you want to select some sort of map. It doesn't really matter. And then you want to go to advanced options, turn off research so we don't have to research heavy cruisers in order to test this. And then everything else doesn't really matter because we're just building the ship. So let's go ahead and start the game. Okay, and then once you're in the game, go to build, heavy cruiser. And as you can see down here, our firepower has changed, which means that our mod should be working. So let's go ahead and construct the heavy cruiser. and then we will wait until it is completed to do our testing. Okay, our heavy cruiser is now complete. Wait for it to launch. And as you can see, it is now launching missiles at a very, very fast pace, which means our modification worked perfectly. Alright, so now let's do the same thing, but we'll make it to where the other ion turrets now shoot plasma bombs. Okay, once you're done messing around with that so that we can adjust the plasma bombs, exit out the game, and be sure to open up the file in your mods folder. Do not open up the file in the games folder. The reason why is because we want to make sure that we make a modification outside of the game, because I do have a bad habit of doing this, but if you modify things in the game and then find out that something crashed because you made a modification, you can't like narrow it down and try to troubleshoot the crash in an effective way. So always make sure that you modify something outside of the game directory and then apply the mod once you get done messing with it. So open up the heavy cruiser. Let's scroll down to the next set of ions, which would be gun number 2 and gun number 3. Then you want to go into your, extracted folder, which should probably still be open, but if not, go ahead and find where you extracted all the files and go to R1. Scroll down until we see the standard frigate, and we want the we want a gun number 3, which is the plasma bombs. So let's go ahead and grab it from the bracket all the way down. Hold down, hit Control C to copy it, and then we want to select all of these from the top bracket to the bottom bracket and Control V. And now we have a plasma bomb, and we'll do the same thing with the next gun. Go, and then we'll make some mild modifications. So let's make it minimum 120 damage to 150, and we'll make it let's make it 3 seconds. Okay, and then for the mass, let's also make it like en masse. This will give the plasma bombs a little bit of pushback. Okay, and to go ahead, file, save. Go ahead and exit out, and then open it one more time just to double check to make sure that the plasma bombs are in, which they are. Then we go back to our folder for Homeworld. Go into R1, and then we copy our new heavy cruiser in here. Go ahead and replace it. There you go, and then you can double check to make sure it's working by opening it up in the mod folder. And you should see plasma bomb. Yep, there it is. Ooh, I forgot to modify the second one. So, just out of good faith, let's go ahead and do that. I only modified the top value instead of the bottom value, which is something that might happen pretty frequently. So go ahead and save that. And now let's launch the game and see what it looks now. Okay, as you can see, the firepower is adjusted again, which means the modification we made has applied. I'm gonna go ahead and build this and we'll test her out. Okay, the heavy cruiser has been built, but for some reason mine is having some weird visual bug, and that could be because of the plasma bomb launchers on the bottom. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that, but you'll get weird things like this every once in a while when you're modding things. But as you can see, it is launching plasma bombs, missiles are being launched. So do not worry too much if stuff like this happens. This is the whole reason why you back up your mods, so then you can put it back in and try to figure out what the heck is going on with it. But let's make sure the plasma bombs are working. Yep, I saw a blue flash, so they are working fine.
Friendly's targeted. Please confirm.
I'll tell to... Weird. There it goes. Now it's targeting the mothership. Let's make sure we can get a good visualization on the plasma bombs. I believe they are working right. Yep, there they go. It's launching the plasma bombs. And then next thing I want to do is replace these kinetic turrets with continuous ion beams. So yeah. We'll see how fun that is. Okay, so before I figure out that visual glitch, I want to go ahead and teach you guys how to make a continuous ion beam. So what we're going to do is we want to swap these out with ion cannons. And what was the best ship that I know that has ion cannons? The Ion Cannon Frigate. So let's go ahead and open up the Ion Cannon Frigate, and we will go ahead and copy this this thing for the ions, and we will go ahead and replace it for all of the rest of the turrets that we haven't modified. So this is turret number 4, or gun number 4, I should say. Oh crap! Hang on, I hit copy instead of paste. My bad. Boop. And we'll do it for this one. Now, as you guys can tell, as we continue to modify the ship, you notice that the turrets have been slowly disappearing off of the heavy cruiser. That's completely normal, because those turrets are designed to only shoot one thing, and since we're replacing them, they kind of just disappear because I don't know what to do about it. So that's going to happen. That is completely normal. So anyways, here we are. Go ahead and get rid of these. These, we don't have to worry too much about these. These are just like notes for the editor. But yeah, just get rid of that top one if it annoys you. And you can get rid of this one as well, as long as you don't get rid of this bracket, which starts decoding for the actual turret. So, in order to make a beam continuous, what we have to do is have the beam lifetime greater than the fire time. Because this is how long the beam lasts, this is when it shoots its next beam. So if we set this to something like 2, and then set this to 1, this means that the beam's going to last 2 seconds, but reset every 1 second, effectively making it continuous. So that's what we're going to do. And for the damage, we'll make it like really low. We'll do something like 10 to 15. Because if we do our calculator, we don't need a balance or anything. We're just, you know, playing around with mods. But I'm just more or less curious. This would be 60 to 90. This would be 60... No, it would be 600 to 900. Per ion beam. Per second. That is a lot of damage. Like I said, this is not going to be balanced, but this is more or less to teach you guys how to properly make mods like this. So we need to go through every single one of these, set them to 10 to 15. Okay, and then we have to set all their speeds to 1 for fire time and 2 for lifetime. So 1 fire time, 2 lifetime. Now the only differences I would make if we adjusted these is how frequently the sound plays. So if you guys ever heard the Bentusi shoot its ions, the reason why the sound plays so frequently because it resets the sound every 0.1 seconds. That's like every 6 game frames it resets the sound, which is why it sounds so you and can get kind of annoying. So if you don't want that to happen so frequently, just set just set these different. Now you don't want to make this like a really large number. Like if we did something like this still effectively makes the beams continuous, but this also means if he kills the target, the beam is going to shoot for 200 seconds. So it's just going to be flying around with its beams activated, which honestly, that might be a pretty good idea for a future video. But yeah. So with every single beam set to 10 damage low, 15 damage high, 2 on bullet lifetime, and 1 on fire time, this should effectively make it to where the heavy cruiser has every single one of its cannons continuously firing. So let's go ahead and save that. And we'll go back to our mod folder. Go to our directory, which is Homeworld, R1. Copy this, paste it over here, overwrite the old one, launch the game, build the ship, and let's see how it turns out. We're now in the build menu, and as you can see, the DPS of the heavy cruiser is now very, very high.
Production underway.
So let's go ahead and build it, and we'll test her out. Okay, our ship is now built. I am telling it to attack the mothership, and as you can see, it is now shooting continuous beams. There's 4, 5, 6. Now, the only problem is there's still a really big visual glitch, and it could be because of the assault bombers. But I can't really move the heavy cruiser around too much because it flickers the screen too much. But yeah, we have 6 continuous ion beams, and missile launchers and plasma bomb launchers all working. I'm gonna quickly swap out those plasma bombs for missile launchers and see if it fixes this glitch. Okay, so I have no idea why there's just such a huge visual glitch on this ship whenever you build it from the mothership, but if you spawn it on a map, it works perfectly fine. As you can see, all 6 ion beams are working, missiles are shooting at the bottom, plasma bombs are shooting at the top, and all the ions are continuous. So yeah, this is how it should be working. So, okay. I think it's just shooting out of the same spot, so it only looks like there's one missile launcher. It's confusing me there for a bit. But yeah, so in the next episode, I'm going to teach you guys how to spawn your own ships in your own custom multiplayer map, and then teach you guys like how to put resources in and how to put other players in. And then eventually show you guys how to make your own custom campaign map like I've been doing for my mod. So yeah, this is actually pretty cool. I love the continuous ion beams attacking the tyrannic area. Anyways guys, that's gonna do it. I hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys learned something pretty cool about modding in Homeworld, and I will check you guys out in the next video. Until then, this is Captain Soban signing out.
The Faker have arrived. Emergency hyperspace procedures initiated. The mothership must survive.